The humble 18650 battery. They can be found in all sorts of things. Your old laptop, your cordless power drill, a high-performance flashlight. For decades, this unassuming cell has been the workhorse of a power revolution. But what's so special about it? And why is it even called an 18650? It's actually quite simple. 18650 is simply the size of the battery. The 18 stands for its diameter. It's 18 millimeters across. 65 is its length, 65 millimeters long. And then the 0 just indicates that it is a cylindrical cell. So 18650, 18650. Unlike the disposable AA batteries of the past, the 18650 is a lithium-ion cell. It packs a massive punch for its size, and it can be recharged hundreds of times. By connecting dozens of them together, engineers create the large, powerful battery packs that run everything from electric bikes to portable power stations. But just like Uncle Ben said,
with great power comes great responsibility.
And safety with these things is no joke. That brings us to our project today. Maybe not a good idea. Don't know how much weight this table's gonna take. This guy right here is an EcoFlow River Pro. It's the first generation of this series. It came out during the peak of COVID back in 2020. And portable power was really all the rage because a lot of people were trying to get out of their homes but didn't necessarily have anywhere to go. So these were great for camping, for being able to get out into the wilderness while still having some of the conveniences of modern life. Now inside each one of these units, and I've got 10 of them, plus a couple of spare backup batteries. Each one of these includes 60 of these 18650 lithium cells. One of the downsides to these cells, and as I was alluding to safety earlier, is that they do require a special computer essentially to keep them running. It's called a battery management system. The BMS is the brain of the battery. It keeps the cells from overcharging or over-discharging. It also regulates things like temperature to make sure that the cells don't try and charge when they're too cold or don't overheat in the event that there is some form of a failure with a cell inside of this pack. Now, the BMS does require voltage to run. To be able to monitor and activate the charging circuits, it requires a little bit of voltage. Unfortunately, if it does not have enough voltage, if maybe these were put into storage without being charged properly, it could cause the BMS to put itself into a state that no longer recognizes there's a battery attached to it. It shuts itself down, goes into a deep hibernation, and unfortunately that means that when we push the power button on the front of this guy, nothing happens. Now I've got 10 of these batteries to work through, and over the next couple videos we're going to take these apart. We're going to explore more about the 18650 cell and take a look at what it would require to get these back up and running. In a lot of cases, I'm assuming that these batteries have just fallen below that threshold. And as long as we do so safely, we may be able to bring these back up to a charging state that the BMS will then activate and then work as a normal battery would. Now, a quick disclaimer. This is an advanced procedure. Do not try this at home, period. My script says to tell you that you should not try it if you don't know what you're doing. Just don't try it. I don't want to be responsible for you burning down your house. And that very well could happen here, so keep watching. Now, my theory on these packs is that individual cells inside them likely have not failed. There was a known defect with an early firmware version on these battery packs where the BMS essentially would not turn itself off, and it would cause the cells to fall down to a voltage to a point where the BMS could no longer power itself. We'll be trying to safely pre-charge the cells with a very low controlled current. This will allow us to get the voltage back up to a level that the BMS will recognize, and then from there allow it to take over the charging. So why did I buy 10 not working battery backups? Well, as you may know, based on the heat and humidity that you see in the warehouse, I live in Florida. Florida gets hot. Florida not only gets hot, but Florida gets hurricanes. And hurricanes aren't a joke. We're in 2025, but last year in 2024, even though I live about 20 miles from the coast, we lost power 2 times for more than 24 hours due to hurricanes in our area. There was flooding right up the street from me that was in people's houses up to around my shoulders. We were fortunate, we didn't have any damage, but the loss of power means that we lost everything in our fridge. After that happens 2 times, and with the price of groceries these days, you can understand why buying a couple $100 worth of battery packs is worth it in the long run. If I'm losing $300 to $400 worth of groceries every time this happens, and it happens 1 or 2 times a year, heck, I've already paid for the battery backups just by having them. Now, my main reason to buy 50 of them was so that I could help to distribute them. Last year, whenever we had our hurricanes, I had money. I tried finding a way to power my devices. I looked for solar, I looked for generators. Everything was sold out. I was able to find a generator on Facebook Marketplace, paid way more for it than I should have. It was a used generator with quite a few hours on it, and I paid over what it sells for new. It came with a gallon of gas in it, and that kept us powered up for a few hours, and then nothing. And there was no gas. Down here in Florida, the other issue that we have when a hurricane comes through is that the ports shut down. If the port of Tampa is not running, fuel isn't coming into Tampa unless it's coming in through the Panhandle. And that's a really long drive. So that means that for about 4 days, there was no fuel in any station near me. Fortunately, I drive a Tesla. For some reason, Tesla superchargers were working. I drove around 300 miles looking for fuel. Fuel can in hand, all I needed was 5 gallons to try and save my fridge. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find it. Tried to siphon some gas out of my better half's car. That didn't work either because you can't really do that these days. They put protection in there. So even though I had a full tank of gas, I couldn't use that gas to turn it into electricity. I didn't have what I needed. So really, this was all about being prepared. These battery backups, because of how many I have, should be able to give me multiple days of backup on my refrigerator, as well as allow me some creature comforts. I've purchased a couple of very small air conditioner units that will run off of these battery backups, and while they're not going to keep my house cold, they'll be enough to blow on you while you're sleeping and maybe allow you to get a little bit of comfort in times that generally kind of suck. So ultimately, that was what it was for. I do hope to be able to implement these into a backup system on my house that has solar built in. I'm not going to be tying it into the grid because here in Florida, that's A, really expensive, and B, it just requires a lot more outside help than I want. I like to do things myself, and I don't want to have to hire an electrician to do something that I'm more than capable of doing. So I'm going to set up an off-grid solar system. It's going to comprise of a few of these batteries, potentially another one that I have that I may show you at some point, which is one that I built myself, which will give us a little bit more time. If the power does go out for 5, 6, 7 days, we'll at least be able to get some solar power in so that we're not dependent on that gas situation that we talked about before. So where do we go from here? So next things we're going to do here is go ahead and take apart these batteries. We're going to dive in, see what makes them tick, and see what we can do to go ahead and get these fixed. I expect that at least a couple of them are probably going to be completely dead. I know that some of the units that I was able to revive the batteries on have a couple of issues with the actual inverter board themselves. So if I'm able to grab some inverter boards, maybe have some bad batteries, absolutely fine. Honestly, I've already got 5 of these working. If I'm able to get 2 or 3 more, I'll be more than happy with that. These units sell refurbished for $300 a piece, and new they sell for around $360. So really, no matter which way I cut it, as long as I can get enough of these to run my house for a couple of days, or at least again, the creature comforts, fine by me. So let's go ahead and dive in, take apart our first battery and see what it looks like. All right, everyone, a little bit of a different view this time. So my goal here is to go ahead and take one of these units apart, let you see what it looks like on the inside, and then from there we'll go ahead and get into some testing, see what kind of voltages we're working with, and what we can do to get these rescued. So the first thing I need to do is pop off up top here some little cosmetic covers. And underneath there, there's some pretty beefy Torx, or rather hex head screws here. I'll show you here this bolt. So this guy goes down inside of this handle, all the way down to the bottom of the battery pack here. So this handle is actually really, really rigid. It holds all the way down to the bottom and kind of allows you to lift the battery from the bottom up instead of just having a handle tacked on here. The handle then comes off. Got some branding up top there. Now this one I've already noticed there's some sticky stuff underneath. So getting back to the story, these were purchased, again, not working. My assumption is that they were some kind of returned items. So maybe these were purchased and then within their warranty period, they were returned. Like I alluded to before, the main issue that I found with the couple that I've taken apart so far is that the battery voltage is just dropped below an amount that the BMS will accept. So to take this off, this top piece just completely lifts off. Now inside of here, it is very important that we keep our hands away from a lot of these large components. So right up top here, inside of this chassis, you will notice a couple of very large capacitors. And the reason why is because this does have a AC inverter that takes the voltage from the battery. It's a 28 volt battery, and it pushes that voltage through to a couple of AC sources on the side here. Now this can power up to 1200 watts. So 1200 watts at 120 volts, which is what this is putting out for North America US standard. That means that this is putting out 10 amps. So there is a theoretical 10 amps of AC current flowing through this, and that can kill you. The DC voltage is not something to be scared of, especially down at this lower voltage. When you're below around 50 volts, DC can't hurt you really that much. Don't go licking it, it's not going to be comfortable. But the AC voltage absolutely can. So touching the wrong thing up inside of this area could potentially risk your life. Again, these very large capacitors here, for instance, are known to hold a charge for a very long time. Pretty sure this one's been dead the entire time I've had it, so I doubt that there's any charge inside of here, but I'm still gonna take precautions and make sure that I'm not touching anywhere that I shouldn't be. I know my way around these boards pretty well, and they do have, like on all the capacitors, EcoFlow is smart enough to put discharge resistors, so they don't hold their charge very long. It would really only be active if I just had this machine on. So not something where I'm gonna be fearing for my life. You won't see my hands start shaking as we go through this, but again, something you really do need to be mindful of. Now, to continue down the teardown route here, the next piece that comes out is actually the entire screen assembly here. And there's a couple of parts that we need to unplug first. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a little bit of a better view for you all up top here. So looking down, there's a few things that I'm gonna unplug right off the bat. First thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna unplug this XD60 connector. Oh, it's really in there, has not been unplugged before. This XT60 connector here is a connector directly down to the battery pack down below. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that. We're also going to remove this XT30 connector. Now this is a smaller, looks very similar to an XT60, and if you've ever worked on drones or hobby projects, you may be familiar with these connectors. But this is what takes the DC charge input from this side. You can charge this either through AC or through DC power. It'll accept anything from, I wanna say 12 to 28 volts. So you can plug in solar panels directly to this, or you can go ahead and charge it off of like your vehicle. But that has disconnected the DC charge from the main board here. The only other item that we need to worry about is a little glued in over here, but it's another XT30, and that's what controls some of these ports on the front of the board here. And then last but not least, there is a control cable here, which I will go ahead and remove from the board side instead of from the generator side. So now this is free to go ahead and pull straight up. Oh, I missed one more. It's been a while since I've taken one of these apart. So there's one more right up top here. Again, just send some signal over. All right, so that's the screen of our EcoFlow. This also has on it a few USB ports as well as a Type-C port for high-speed charging. And then it does have a 12-volt outlet similar to what you would see inside of a vehicle. So that's your cigarette lighter adapter. And then it has on this side as well a pretty bright flashlight, again, for use in like an emergency situation. Now the back of these, kind of what I was expecting to see. They've all been very, very clean. This also includes things like the antenna here for Wi-Fi. These are really neat units. They do connect to Wi-Fi so that you can control and manage them that way. But not much else on here that we really need to get into. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and set this apart. Now, the next things to come out here are actually going to be this main board, but it does require that we take a few more screws out. So for that, there are Phillips screws in this case. There's only 4 of them. There's one right up here, one right down here, one right up here, and then one more right on this corner. Once we take those out, that will allow us to then pull this entire board along with the charge side and the discharge side all up in one piece. Now I've got all of the screws taken out, which should allow us to lift up on the AC connections here and the charge board here. I'm gonna also go ahead and grab right underneath the plastic because I know where I can put my fingers in here. You'll notice there's also a fan and fan shroud and some pretty hefty heat sinks in here. These things, even here in the warehouse, when we've got 100-degree days, have not been getting too hot to use. So they do have a good amount of cooling on them and they seem to work really, really well. I haven't had any power cutouts or anything like that. I've got one right now running my air conditioning unit actually, which is keeping me cool so that I can do this without melting for you all. So this again is going to be the entire inverter itself. We've got, again, the inputs and the outputs here. For now, we're gonna go ahead and set this aside because again, I expect that this part of the unit is more than likely functioning correctly. And now we get to, as it were, the meat and potatoes. Now, what we're looking at on the top of the battery here, this is the BMS. So as I said before, the BMS is the brain of the battery. It tells the battery how to charge, how much it's able to charge to. It regulates things like temperature and incoming currents, as well as the output of the battery to make sure it's not stressed too hard and potentially causes a heat buildup. Now inside of this battery, the things that we're going to be looking at are actually really easy to get to. EcoFlow made this battery pretty simple to work on, which is surprising. I wasn't expecting that when I first tore one of these down, but you'll notice that there's these blobs of solder here at different various points on the board. And each of those correlates with one of the different contacts on the group of cells for the battery. And they're even nicely labeled. So this one right down here shows up as 0. We've got a 0 right here on the board. From there, we go up here to 1. So this is cell 0 to 1. So we have here, in theory, a negative connector. The 1 is going to be the positive to that negative, and that's 1 cell bank. Then we go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3 over here, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and you'll notice here 4 shows up on both sides. That does have a parallel set of cells on both sides of the board here. So we went 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7, all the way up here to 8. So this has a total of 9 cells or 9 packages of cells in series, which allows it to have a nominal voltage of 28 volts. So 0 to 8 should give us a total of 28.8 volts nominal whenever we connect these all together. Gives us a total of 32 volts when we are fully charged, a little over actually. So that's what we're working with here. The next thing we need to do is get our voltmeter and verify what kind of voltages we're seeing come off of these cells. Is there anything at all to work with, or is this battery completely dead? And this is going to be a surprise for me, just as it is for you. For now, we're going to go ahead and do some testing of some voltages on some cells here. So let me prop the battery up so you can see it. And you should see somewhere probably right around here will be the voltage. All right, so what I'm going to do first is go ahead and put my negative probe on my negative battery terminal here, and then we're going to go straight to cell 1. So what I'm seeing out of that cell right now is 1.1 volts. Not great to see that. Lithium cells don't like being discharged generally below around 2 volts. Anything lower than that, and you're risking some internal damage. Now, I know for a fact that these cells, because of how this BMS works, they were dropped down to 1.1 volts very, very slowly. That's our only potential saving grace here. Because of the fact that these dropped down so slowly, and they weren't stressed during that time frame, there was no heat buildup, then there is a possibility that we will be able to go ahead and get these cells revived, get them working without creating dendrites within the cell, which could potentially cause a charging issue later on down the line. For now, we're going to go ahead and continue on, see what our next set is. So for that, I'm going to put my negative now on 1, and I'm going to move my positive to 2. Now I expect to see very similar voltages across the range here. So it's generally going to be between 0.9 and 1 volt. That's very expected here. 2 to 3. So that's not great. So half a volt or 465 millivolts means that there is potential to have a shorted cell here. We'll check the resistance here in a moment as well. All right, 3 to 4, we have 1.4 volts. That's looking good again. And then go to 5. 5 again is another one of those low cells. So let me make sure, yep, I do have everything right here. Now this has been my experience. The middle cells have generally been lower than the outer cells, and that may just be that these are the ones closer to the main components of the BMS, and maybe it was draining some power a little bit longer from these. 5 to 6, we're looking at, again, less than 1 volt, 0.7. I'm not loving what I'm seeing here so far. The other ones did have much higher voltages, so this one may be just a parts-only rig. And finally, 7 to 8, a little over 1 volt there. So if I take a full reading from this pack, from full negative to positive, we're looking at 7 volts. That's not much. So what I've been able to do from here to try and get any kind of working battery out of these is I have been able to slow charge the batteries via a DC source at a very, very low rate. And that has been working well enough for us to go ahead and get these brought back to life, or at least get the BMS brought back to life, and then from there it can handle where the charge goes. So that's what we're going to do next time on our next video here. We're going to go ahead and hook up some wires to the solder points on the board, and that's going to allow us to hook up some probes and monitor as we're charging here. Once we get each of these cells above around 2 volts, that generally then has enough voltage to go ahead and boost this up, turn on the actual charger, and from there it can try and balance out the cells. Now, if for whatever reason we go ahead and put this on to charge and we either are not seeing a voltage come up or we're not seeing it maintain, then that means that we probably do have a cell that's dead in there. Let's leave this video here. We're going to go ahead and reconvene on the next video where we will have our soldering station set up. We'll go ahead and add some probes here and see if we can't get this powered up with our DC power supply.